Superhero video games. Today, they're known for mostly being a AAA affair. From the Arkham series to Insomniac Spider-Man to other games like Midnight Suns, it's very clear that companies understand the value of what makes a good superhero game. And while not all superhero games released today are winners, we're definitely in a way better place now than we were in the mid-2000s. But with the 2000s pumping out such classics as Batman Dark Tomorrow, Aquaman Battle for Atlantis, and Marvel Nemesis Rise of the Imperfects, it was clear to everyone that something had to change. In late 2007, a little company called Rocksteady Studios began development on a game called Batman Arkham Asylum. The game, which was an action-adventure centered on Batman being trapped in the titular prison, released in 2009 for the PS3 and Xbox 360, it would go on to receive stellar reviews across the board. But at the same time Rocksteady was working on their first entry in their Arkhamverse, another developer was also racing ahead with a superhero project of their own. Publisher Brash Entertainment, the publisher of such games as Alvin and the Chipmunks, Space Chimps, and Jumper Griffin Story, had enlisted developer Bottle Rocket Entertainment, developer of Rise of the Kasai and Shaolin Showdown, to make a game centered around DC's resident Scarlet Speedster, The Flash. However, although Barry Allen is the Flash most people know, Bottle Rocket would instead choose Wally West as the Flash players would control in the game, with Wally being very prominent in the comics as well as the Justice League TV series at the time. Ryan Reynolds was reportedly being tapped to voice the character a few years before he would take the reins as a different DC hero. Being developed for the PS3 and Xbox 360, the game was being designed as an open-world experience. Early on in development, the game was set to take place across America in various cities home to different members of the Justice League, with each member of the League appearing as supporting characters. The idea would be that the Flash would receive an alert that a member of the League would need help, and would then have to race to the city in question in order to assist each of the heroes in various missions. Superman and Batman were set to appear, but this idea was scrapped early on for being too ambitious. Still wanting to keep the open world aspect and allow players to freely roam to their heart's content, the idea was then reworked into just being two cities instead. These being Central City, the home of Barry Allen, and Keystone City, the home of Wally West. Each city would be diverse and unique from one another to make players feel as if they had arrived in an entirely new location. In order to avoid making the Flash too powerful from the start of the game, the player would start their adventure without many of the Red Blur's signature skills. The game then would have featured the ability to unlock and upgrade various powers throughout your adventure. Certain abilities, like the Flash making multiple versions of himself or creating tornadoes, would only be unlocked upon completing certain missions. The gameplay also would have relied on QuickTime events, which would allow you to make better combos. The game also would have featured a morality system similar to games like Infamous, where certain choices you would make in the story and gameplay would change the outcome of certain events. For example, good deeds would result in Flash receiving fans around the two cities, having murals erected in his honor, and more missions being unlocked. Bad deeds, however, would result in people being more hostile to the Flash and less chances for upgrades. As far as the Flash's speed goes, the developers didn't want to take a page out of pretty much every other game's book by slowing down time to show the character's speed. The devs wanted Flash's speed to be more realistic. To achieve this, the idea was that players would see everything around them in the normal speed they typically see it, with only the Flash himself having that extra boost of speed. To get gamers used to this effect, the Flash would start out with a slightly faster than average speed, but the longer your run would last, Flash would appear to be running faster and faster. Bottle Rocket wanted to show players what it truly meant to step into the shoes of the fastest man on Earth. The game's story would have been set during Wally's first year as the Flash, as he comes to grips with his new abilities and Barry's pre-established villains known as the Rogues. Many of Barry's classic villains would appear for Wally to fight, with the main antagonists slated to be Reverse Flash and Gorilla Grodd. Secondary antagonists in the game's story would have included the likes of Captain Cold, who would have been the first of the rogues you would encounter in the game during the very first mission, Weather Wizard, Mirror Master, Abracadabra, the Trickster, Captain Boomerang's son, though not Captain Boomerang himself for some reason, Top, the Turtle, the Pied Piper, Fallout, Heatwave, Murmur, Shade, and Tar Pit. Each of these encounters would involve a boss fight, and all would have been necessary to progress in the game's story. More basic enemies would also appear along the way for the player to fight, such as some henchmen who appear to be allied with Weather Wizard, Cadmus agents, and speed demons, who would be soldiers who would attain super speed to fight you. You would either face them regularly or in a race. Aside from the rogues and basic henchmen, various speedsters would appear in the game as well, though it is currently unknown what role they would have played. These include Jay Garrick, the Bart Allen version of Kid Flash, Impulse and Inertia, and Jesse Quick. The Wally West version of Kid Flash would also appear, but to what extent is unknown, since Wally would be wearing the traditional Flash suit in the game. Perhaps this model would be used for a tutorial mission or two, and you would then gain the suit we all know and love. But that's just speculation on my part. But wait, where's Barry Allen? We have his enemies, we have a bunch of his fellow speedsters, and we have his costume. So where is he? Well, we don't know. What role Barry would have had in the game is completely unknown, and all we can do is speculate. Perhaps he vanishes and Wally has to pick up the mantle. Who knows? However, while we don't know what Barry's role in the main game would be, there was another part of the game he was confirmed for. Let's face it, this game sounds overly ambitious as is. 2 separate open world cities, a morality system that might have spawned off into different narrative choices, a unique way of perceiving the Scarlet Speedster's abilities, an upgradable combat system, and multiple separate unique boss battles. It would be a lot for any team to handle, let alone a small team like the folks at Bottle Rocket Entertainment. But the game didn't end there. The game was also set to feature an online multiplayer mode. This mode would have centered on competing against other players in various races. Certain characters would have been able to be used here like Superman, Reverse Flash, and yes, even Barry Allen, among others. Obviously, implementing any sort of online features greatly increases the scope of a video game. And while this mode seems rather simple, that doesn't make it any less ambitious. Despite the ambitious nature of the game, it seemed to be progressing smoothly enough, with both Brash and Warner Brothers loving the game and how it was coming along. But then came a major bump in the road. As it turns out, publisher Brash Entertainment didn't exactly have the right staff for the job. The majority of their employees came from a Hollywood background. The company was founded in 2007 by Legendary Pictures co-founder Thomas Tull. But therein lied the problem. Tull had never worked in the gaming industry before. Neither had a majority of their employees. The only one who had, Nicholas Logano, had previously worked for Vivendi Universal Games, known for such games as The Simpsons Hit and Run. With all this being the case, Brash was not well equipped to meet the deadline that had been set for the game's completion. To top it off, all 3 of its previous games at the time Flash was being worked on, Alvin and the Chipmunks, Jumper, Griffin Story, and Space Chimps, had lost the company money. With this, Brash shut its doors on November 14th, 2008. With Brash closing, Bottle Rocket faced a big problem. They were still a year and a half away from completing the game. Committed and determined to see it through, they sought to find another publisher, but even Warner Brothers balked at the idea. The issue was the video game rights to the character. Brash owned the rights, and whoever wanted them would have to pay the company. But the company was shutting down. And who wants to give money to a company that's already dead in the water? Warner Brothers had a very simple solution for Bottle Rocket. Wait until the rights reverted back to WB. But that wasn't an option. Bottle Rocket was barely surviving as it was, and being a smaller company, they mainly worked freelance, relying on each job to keep its lights on and its employees fed. To make matters worse, Brash's shutdown meant that Bottle Rocket's employees were never paid for their work on the game. The decision was made to put the game on hold until the rights reverted. Bottle Rocket then partnered with Namco to develop Splatterhouse, a reboot of the beat-em-up hack-and-slash game that originally released back in 1988. which gave the company revenue and a means to stay alive a bit longer. But then creative differences arose with that project, which led to Namco taking Splatterhouse away from Bottle Rocket. Left with no other options, the company was forced to close in September of 2009. Like The Flash, they sadly couldn't outrun fate for long. Footage of the game would be uploaded online in 2014 by a former Bottle Rocket employee, which is the footage you've been seeing throughout most of this video. The Flash game truly could have been something special. Imagine a world where this made it to store shelves. The team seemed to really care about what they were making, and it's a shame that the downfall of their publisher ultimately led to the studio's shutdown. But at the end of the day, Bottle Rocket tried their best to make the game happen, despite the hand they were dealt. They kept racing toward their goal until they simply couldn't anymore. And that's what The Flash is all about at the end of the day. Run, Wally. Run. Hey everyone, Seeker here. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and as always, if you did, please be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. I plan on having more videos about canceled video games in the future, so I hope you'll stay tuned for those, as well as my traditional Lost Media content. Take care everyone, and I'll see you all in the next video.